Well, hello and welcome to our live telephone town hall meeting. We're dialing out right now to New Jersey's 7th Congressional District for a live forum. We've just got a couple of folks on right now, but we'll have thousands joining over the next few minutes here, so we appreciate you being on. Hang tight, and I'll tell you how you can participate in our live telephone town hall meeting tonight. We will be joined in a moment here by your Congressman, Tom Malinowski, again representing you in the 7th Congressional District of New Jersey. He's here to provide you updates tonight, and then we'll spend most of this forum on Q&A. Tonight's live forum will focus on the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act. It was signed into law just yesterday, so Congressman Malinowski is holding this live forum to provide you with updates on that legislation and to answer any questions you may have about it. We will prioritize questions on the Inflation Reduction Act, but we will take more questions on other topics later in the forum if we have time. We'll go for an hour tonight. But again, we're going to focus the conversation on the Inflation Reduction Act. We'll hear some updates from Congressman Malinowski on that legislation in just a moment. And as you listen to those updates from the Congressman, think about questions you might like to ask him about the Inflation Reduction Act. And again, as soon as you're ready to submit a question for Q&A, all you have to do is press 0. Get that question to an operator, let them know what it is you'd like to ask, and we'll put you in the queue to ask your question live. If you're not comfortable asking your question live, you can still press 0, still get that question to one of our operators, and then you can let them know if you want me to read your question over the air. I'm happy to read your question. If you're not comfortable going live, just be sure to let your operator know that you want me to read it if you do when you press 0 to submit your question. We can also get you email updates from Congressman Malinowski's office moving forward if you'd like to be kept updated on this legislation and other issues that affect you in the 7th Congressional District of New Jersey. You can press 7 on your phone to provide you an email address to one of our operators, and they'll get you signed up for that email update from the Congressman's office. So again, we're going to focus on the Inflation Reduction Act tonight. It was just passed and signed into law yesterday. The Congressman will give you updates. As you're listening, think about questions about this subject, and you can press 0 to submit a question for Q&A. We will prioritize questions on the Inflation Reduction Act, but we'll take questions later on in the forum on other topics if we have time. We're going to go for an hour. We're going to start right now. Just to give you a little bit of additional information in case you want to read more about what the Congressman is doing in Washington, you can visit his website at malinowski.house.gov. You can also get updates from the Congressman's office on Facebook at Rep. Malinowski, on Twitter at Rep. Tom Malinowski, and on Instagram. And you can subscribe to Rep. Tom Malinowski on YouTube as well. So again, follow Congressman Tom Malinowski on Facebook. You can find him on Twitter at Rep. Malinowski. You can find him on Instagram at Rep. Tom Malinowski, and you can subscribe to Rep. Tom Malinowski on YouTube. Let's get started with our forum. It's my pleasure to kick off this live event by turning it over to your Congressman, Tom Malinowski. Please go ahead, Representative.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for joining this evening, and I'm delighted to have this chance to talk to you about the progress we're making in Washington for a change. We hear a lot about how divided our politics are, and in many ways they are. We hear a lot about how broken Washington is and how difficult it is to get things done in the United States Congress, and a lot of that is true, and yet somehow in the last year and a half or so, this Congress that was elected in 2020, I think it's fair to say, has been about as productive as any Congress that you guys have sent to Washington in as long as I can remember. We had the infrastructure bill last year, which is so good and so important for the state of New Jersey in terms of fixing our roads and mass transit and our water systems, flood control, all of the money that we're now bringing back to communities across New Jersey. We had our first gun violence prevention bill that Congress enacted in several decades. We had the CHIPS Act to bring high-tech manufacturing back to America from China and other countries. We passed the PACT Act to help our veterans, to keep our commitment to them, to veterans who've been exposed to toxic substances abroad. And then in the last couple of weeks, we saw this remarkable progress in passing the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA for short. And so I want to just go through some of the details of that with you all, and then take any questions that you might have. This is basically a bill that deals with the cost of healthcare, one of the main drivers of cost of living right now in America, the cost of energy, and our transition, hopefully, to clean energy, and in dealing with inflation by addressing those problems in a fiscally responsible way. And I'll try to cover all of those in a few opening remarks. In terms of health care, one of the promises that I made when I first ran in 2018, based on what I was hearing from constituents all across our congressional district, was that we needed to do something about the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs in particular. We know in America we pay far more for common prescription drugs than people in almost any other wealthy country in the world, even for drugs like insulin that were patented over 100 years ago that should be cheap, and yet we have folks paying hundreds, sometimes $1,000 a month for drugs like that. I was just speaking to a retired firefighter a couple of weeks ago in Long Hill, and I asked him, like, what's your number one challenge in life? And he told me, well, there's just one drug that I'm taking out of many that is costing me about $4,000 a year. Well, with the Inflation Reduction Act, we have finally done something about that. We've taken the common sense step of allowing Medicare finally to negotiate with the drug companies to get the price of these drugs down, something Medicare had been forbidden from doing by law for many, many years. We have decided in this bill, which, again, the president signed yesterday, to cap the out-of-pocket costs that seniors will pay for all of the drugs that they may need to $2,000 a year by 2025. It'll go down to about $4,000 starting in 24, and then $2,000 in 2025. That will be a game changer, I think, for a lot of seniors in our communities. Insulin for seniors would be capped at $35 a month starting next year, and the drug companies will have to rebate Medicare starting next year for any increases in drug prices that are faster, that go up higher than inflation. Not easy to make these changes with the power of the pharmaceutical lobby in Washington, D.C., but we've done it, and it's something I'm very, very proud to be able to report back to you guys on. On the cost of health care, a year ago, we addressed a problem in the Affordable Care Act, namely that it wasn't affordable for middle-class Americans. If you were making more than $50,000 a year, the Affordable Care Act coverage was there if you needed it, but it was very expensive. We fixed that with subsidies that were about to expire this year. In the Inflation Reduction Act, we extend those subsidies for another 5 years. Those provisions are saving middle-class families in New Jersey who rely on the Affordable Care Act hundreds of dollars a month, and those savings are now going to continue. And then on energy, we know in New Jersey that we're experiencing weather that we've not seen in our lifetimes. 500-year storms happening every 5 or 10 years. We know climate change. It's 5 feet of water in our basements, and we need to do something about it. And we want to do something about it in a way that also helps our economy, that also makes America the world leader in transitioning to clean energy. I want America to lead that transition, not China, not any other country. And so we decided, and we have accomplished in the Inflation Reduction Act the biggest investment in history in clean energy, in fighting climate change, and making America the world leader in advancing that revolutionary transition. We're doing it not by forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to do, not through regulation on businesses, but through tax incentives that will simply make clean energy more affordable for everybody who wants to use it. So electric vehicle tax credits that will make these cars much more affordable for everyone who wants to buy them. Rebates and tax credits that will help us weatherize our homes and transition to cleaner ways of powering our homes, heating our homes, that will save us a lot of money in the long term, and tax incentives to encourage our utilities to generate electricity from renewable sources much more quickly than they otherwise would have done. And all of this is not just fully paid for, but the bill as a whole will raise money for the federal Treasury and reduce the federal budget deficit, which is why dozens and dozens of our country's leading economists have said that it will reduce inflationary pressures. So it's very, very different from the spending that we did during the pandemic, which was designed to, to stimulate the economy. This bill was written in a very fiscally responsible way to actually reduce the inflationary pressures that are causing the price increases that all of us are suffering from, while achieving all of these other benefits to make our lives more affordable. So I think it's an extraordinarily positive step forward. We're also getting more tax fairness in this legislation. One of the things that has made me incredibly angry over many years is knowing that some of the biggest corporations in America, corporations like Amazon and Nike and FedEx, are able to game the tax system so that they end up paying zero federal taxes many years, sometimes even getting refunds from the taxpayers. That leaves the rest of us, regular middle class people, who we can't change the amount of tax that's withheld from our paychecks every month. It puts the burden on us to fund the government, and companies like Amazon that use infrastructure, use roads and ports and airports end up getting off scot-free. And so one of the ways we make this bill fiscally responsible is by applying a 15% minimum tax to corporations making over $1 billion of profits every single year. So one way to look at it is it's a bill that lowers drug prices for seniors while making Amazon pay taxes. And I think that's something all of us can welcome. There's still a lot going on in our country that worries me. I'm worried about the continuing divisions. I'm worried about threats of violence, particularly the threats of violence we've seen in recent days against federal law enforcement. I'm worried about some of the things the Supreme Court is doing. But I'm glad that I can report for a change that the United States Congress, the representatives you elected, are doing the things that you asked us to do, particularly to make life more affordable in New Jersey and for Americans in general when it comes to health care, when it comes to energy. So with that, can't wait to hear your thoughts and questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can today. Thanks.
Appreciate the updates. Thank you again, Congressman Malinowski, and thank you to everyone from New Jersey's 7th Congressional District who's joined us. We're going to start off our live conversation now by starting to take some of your questions. A reminder that if you have a question to submit for Q&A, you can press 0, get in line to give that question to an operator. You can either go live with your question, or you can let your operator know you want me to read it. I'm happy to do that for you if that's your preference. You can also get email updates from the Congressman's office by pressing 7 on your phone. Let's go to our first question. We've got Mark in Flemington. Mark, thanks for being our first caller on the line. You're live with Congressman Malinowski. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Hey, Congressman, it's Mark. Great to hear your voice. Thanks for what you're doing and what your team is doing down there in D.C. Real quick question. As you know, I'm a pharmacist. Happy about the $2,000 reduction for seniors. Concerned about more things that need to be done. PBMs are out of control for all Americans, not only those on Medicare. And 340B drug pricing in hospitals and other entities has gone through the roof, and that is a big, big challenge. And third, the hospital price transparency rule that is in effect is not being appropriately enforced, if you will. So there's a lot left on the table that's very confusing to the consumer around what's going on in hospital price transparency. All of that will help bring down costs in healthcare a lot more. And I've seen it from the front lines as being a healthcare professional. Love to help you out further on these, but love to hear what you see the next steps in helping helping Americans with these issues.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And look, I want to just say across the board, as happy as I am that we've managed to get this stuff done, I don't want to suggest that the job is done on healthcare, on drug pricing, on energy, on any of the issues that I mentioned. Big step forward, but a lot more to get done. I want to focus in particular on one of the points you made, the role of the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, these companies that have emerged in recent years essentially as middlemen standing between patients, insurance companies, and pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies complain about them too, and I think with reason. I think they've got a point. One of the things that the PBMs do is they negotiate rebates with the pharmaceutical companies, which sounds great until you learn that the rebates aren't passed down to consumers, to us. The PBMs just basically pocket these rebates, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we have these middlemen companies? I'm not sure exactly what service that provides to anybody, but it certainly creates a lot of extra profit for them while resulting in higher drug prices for everybody else. So I support legislation. This is something we haven't done and must do. That would, at a minimum, require those rebates that PBMs negotiate to be passed down to actual consumers, actual people who need those savings. And I think that's actually a legitimate complaint that our pharmaceutical companies make to us quite a bit. That it's not all their fault. There's this other layer in the system that has to be dealt with. And we're taking notes and would love to talk to you about some of the other issues that you raised. In general, I want to make sure we do right by our pharmacists, particularly our independent pharmacies, that play such an important role in forward-facing role in serving consumers, particularly our seniors. And I want to make sure that you guys are doing well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Representative, and I appreciate you, Mark. Thanks for being our first caller. We're going to go right to Diane in Hillsborough next here. Diane, thanks for waiting. You're live with the Congressman.
Hi, Tom. I thank you for the teleconference calls that you have been making, and I've attended almost every one of them. I have two questions. One of them goes for the 2000 limit. In all the papers, the TV, there was never a year mentioned. You mentioned a year just before.
Yep. The
second question is, on Medicare going out for bidding, we have to wait until 2026. This is 2022. That's 4 years from now, and there could be many seniors that either go broke trying to pay for their medicine in that time, or even die because they can't get the medicine in 4 years that they need. So why was it set so far in advance? They already know which ones they would allow you a discount on.
Yep. So it's a totally fair question, and I feel your frustration on that as well. So the $2,000 cap is fully in place in 2025, which is not tomorrow. I get it. It begins to go down in 2024, so a little over a year from now. So people will begin to feel the cost savings then, and you'll also feel some benefits starting basically now, because what kicks in right now is they can't jack up prices higher than inflation, and that's been a big problem, right? That we get that things get more expensive over time, but drug prices get more expensive much faster than other things, faster than inflation. So that kicks in right away. So there's some benefit now, more benefit in 2024, and then very significant benefit starting in 2025. Look, this is often the case with complicated legislation that we pass. Sometimes because political compromises are made, we have to overcome a lot of lobbying from the pharmaceutical industry and its supporters on the Hill to be able to pass this. And sometimes, to be fair, just because it takes time for big, institutions like Medicare to put in place new policies. Remember when we passed Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, in 2010, it didn't actually, we didn't feel the benefits of it until 2014, 2015. And for the first couple of years, right, a lot of Americans got told that it was a terrible thing. And then when they actually started feeling the effects and the benefits, it became very popular. So I feel your pain on that. I wish it was all in place tomorrow, but we will start feeling benefits as early as next year, and they will just get better over time. Thanks so much.
Much appreciated. Thank you again, Congressman. Thank you, Diane. Appreciate you. Thanks for bringing that topic into the forum. Let's go right to Karen in Mountainside. Karen, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi. Thanks, Tom. We are huge supporters in our family for you. So hope everything goes well. I had kind of one question and then a strategic question. With the SALT tax, since Joe Manchin did quite a bit of the negotiating with the Inflation Reduction Act, he could care less about it, and I'm just wondering, is there another approach to it, or can we get President Biden to do some kind of executive order to reduce it for the few states that have been impacted?
He can't do it. Thanks for the question. I don't think there's anything dramatic that the president can do because it's in the law that unfortunately Congress passed in 2017. Right, this is when it all started. That horrible tax bill that they passed in 2017, and so we've been trying to get the full deduction back. Last year, when we passed the famous or infamous Build Back Better bill, depending on your point of view, in the House, I got a provision in there that would have raised the cap to $80,000, which more than enough to cover almost everybody in New Jersey, certainly any middle class person in New Jersey. But then that bill did not get through the Senate, and we didn't have Manchin for doing the SALT deduction in this bill. I still love the bill. The savings from the bill between the healthcare subsidies, the pharmaceutical drug reductions, the energy credits are probably in excess for the typical family of what we lost from the SALT deduction. But it's still not acceptable to me that we don't have the full SALT deduction. So those talks are going to continue. There's going to be tax legislation at the end of the year where Senator Menendez and I and others are going to try to get something done. One of the arguments we've got is that if Congress does absolutely nothing, the SALT deduction comes back in 2025 because that provision from that old tax bill, the 2017 tax bill, expires after that. And so the people in the Senate who don't like our SALT deductions, including Joe Manchin and all the Republicans, if they don't do anything, they're gonna lose too, right? Because SALT comes back fully. So what we're offering them is a deal where we're willing to take 99%, maybe not 100%, maybe not full deductibility for billionaires, but we're willing to take something that covers every middle class person in New Jersey now, but in exchange for maybe not doing the billionaires and everybody for the next 10 years. And I think that would be a good deal for me. It would be a good deal for you, for everyone in New Jersey. But it would also be, I think, a good deal for those senators who have argued that the SALT deduction is just for the rich. I disagree with them, but there is a solution here that addresses their concerns and addresses our concerns. And if they don't take it, well, then we're just going to get salt back by doing nothing in 2025. Thanks so much.
Appreciate you taking that on, Congressman. And we had questions of a similar nature from Mary, Ann, and Rick, so glad we could take on that topic here. We're going to just keep plugging through our queue. Thanks to everybody who's submitting all of these great questions. A quick reminder here, just at the halfway mark of our forum, if you want to get email updates from the Congressman's office, please press 7. Speak to an operator, give them your best email, and he can keep you updated on these types of issues moving forward. Michael in Westfield, we've got you live next. Thanks for waiting. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Congressman. Very nice of you to do this call. And I have a two-part question, and they are related. So I'm sure you voted for the bill, and you must be very familiar with the details of the bill. So according to Congressional Budget Office, there's something that I read which sort of disturbed me in the sense that this bill will project that the government will take an average of 5% more from our national economy in the next 30 years than it did on average over the last 50 years. And this is a CBO projection. So looking at the GDP in 2022, about $25 trillion, at its 26% of GDP, government spending will be over $1 trillion more than it would have been at 21%. So I'd like to understand, how is this qualified as an Inflation Reduction Act? And the second part of the question is that part of this legislature allows IRS to hire 87,000 agents, which what I read in the description of the job requirements was a requirement to use deadly force if necessary. So I'd like you to really comment on this because that information is extremely puzzling. Thank you.
Sure. I'm very happy you raised those things because there's a lot of stuff out there that is not correct about this bill. So I'm delighted to have a chance to respond. First, just on the Inflation Reduction, I don't want to overstate this. I'm not arguing that Joe Biden signed this yesterday and inflation is gone tomorrow. That's not how it works. But most of the leading economists in this country, Republicans and Democrats, have looked at this. We have 5 former Treasury secretaries, Republicans and Democrats, who have looked at this, and they've said that it reduces inflation over time very simply because it raises more revenue than it spends. Again, very different from the pandemic spending when, deliberately we were pumping money into the economy to bring us out of a Great Depression. That increased the deficit. This is going to reduce the deficit. It takes more money out than it puts in. And so even, relatively conservative economists like Larry Summers, who's been very critical of Joe Biden on inflation in the past, has said we should absolutely do this because it is anti-inflationary. Joe Manchin, very concerned about inflation. Obviously, he's not some kind of socialist woke Democrat. That inflation was his number one concern, and this was a bill that he negotiated. So let me address this IRS issue. I was in my office today in Somerville and met with a couple of constituents, small business owners, who had been charged $50,000 more than they owed by the IRS. And they spent months struggling to get somebody on the phone at the IRS to help them. They couldn't do it. They came to my office, and we got them their money back. I have hundreds of constituents coming to my office because they cannot get their refunds back from the IRS, even a year after they filed their taxes. Why is this? Because since 2010, we have been cutting the IRS budget. It's gone down 20% since 2010. We've had a huge decrease in the number of people doing customer service, the number of people doing audits of millionaires since 2010 have gone down by almost 80%. Audits of big corporations since 2010 have gone down by over 50%. And so we're at a point right now where you're more likely to be audited if you're a poor person or a middle-class person than if you're very rich and you have very complicated taxes. And here's the key point: if you can afford to hire armies of accountants and lawyers to fight back if the IRS tries to audit you, which is why they don't do it, because they don't have the staff anymore to collect the taxes from those people that those people owe. And they don't have the staff to answer our phones when we need help from them. And that's what we're trying to do here. You've read this number that's like spreading like wildfire, 86,000 revenue agents. That was, I'll tell you exactly where that comes from. The IRS did a report several years ago, and they said, well, if we could get the money, we would hire 86,000 people, and 50,000 of them, listen very carefully to this, 50,000 of them we need to hire to replace staff who are likely to retire, who are close to retirement age in the next few years. The remaining 35,000 or so, most of those people would be customer service, the people who we need when our refunds don't come back, when we have questions from the IRS, when we feel like they've taken too much. Some would be added to the team that does audits, that used to audit rich people and corporations and no longer does. These people are not these are auditors. There's a very small unit in the IRS, less than 2,000 people, that does very complex criminal type investigations, and probably less than 1% of the new people hired would go to that unit, and they need it. I'll say finally, the Secretary of the Treasury and the head of the IRS, who was appointed by President Trump, he's still there, have issued orders very clearly stating that the audit rate for people making less than $400,000 a year shall not go up. And I can promise you, United States Congress will be on them, will do oversight, and we will make absolutely sure that they keep that promise. This is about making sure that wealthy corporations and wealthy Americans that know they can't be audited now actually pay the taxes they owe, so that middle-class Americans are not screwed by having the burden on our shoulders. Thank you so much.
And thank you again, Congressman. Appreciate you taking on that question. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate both of your questions. And we'll get to Peter next in Somerville. Peter, thank you for joining us. We've got about 25 minutes left. Time for quite a few more questions, though. Go ahead with yours, please, Peter.
Yes, my question is, why does New Jersey charge so much money on the gas tax, approximately 41 cents a gallon, which is 5 times more than the oil companies make? And it's just free money, and you just collect the money, and it could be eliminated, which would drop the gas cost per gallon quite a lot. The oil companies, all the big ones, have made minimal profits over the last 20 years. Yes, they're making a lot of money right now, but they've been destroyed the last few years by the COVID. And what's your explanation for this?
Sure. Well, the gas tax, as you know, is set in Trenton by the state legislature, not by, at least the state gas tax. The 41-cent gas tax is set in Trenton by the state legislature. I hope your state senator or assembly person does forums like this, so you can ask them that question. I think what they would say is that the gas tax at the state level funds highway maintenance and repair in New Jersey and mass transit. So if you got rid of the gas tax, yes, we'd be paying 41 cents less at the pump, but somehow the state of New Jersey would have to make up for that money to continue maintaining our roads and our streets, which we also expect them to do, and we're pissed off when the potholes aren't filled. So these are not easy choices, and yet they have to be made. We've debated in Congress. We have a much smaller federal gas tax. We've debated whether there should be a gas tax holiday, and the decision we came to is that it would be very hard at the federal level to ensure that that if we got rid of the gas tax, that it would actually be passed down to the consumer, because that gas tax is passed quite high up the chain between the oil company and the refinery. They might not pass it down. It would save us 18 cents or so a gallon, which isn't a lot, and also it would starve the federal highway trust fund, which we would have to replenish with other tax dollars. So there are other things that we can do. And I'm not sure if I would agree with you that oil companies aren't doing well in this country. It's not just the last couple of years. Yes, 2020 was hard for them. That was 1 year, but I think the last 20 years, if I were ExxonMobil, I'd be, I wouldn't be complaining. And one of the problems is that a lot of the oil and gas companies reduced production, including at refineries, gasoline refineries, and didn't restart it quickly enough in 2021 when it was absolutely clear that the pandemic economy was past us, that people were driving and traveling again. We've been kicking their butts to do that, including threatening things like a windfall profits tax. That's something that I've supported on the oil companies, and I think they're getting the message. It's one reason why we do see gas prices coming down somewhat, below $4 a gallon average in the country. Not enough yet. We have to keep on working at this until we get greater relief. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you again. Appreciate that answer. And thank you to Peter. We've got, let's see, about 22 minutes left, and we're going to Cynthia next. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us. What's your question for the Congressman?
I have 2 points, and I'd like him to address them. One is that I'm a senior citizen. My husband and I are retired, and we're on fixed incomes. And tax credits end up not being an incentive for us to install solar or to be able to purchase an electric or a more fuel-efficient vehicle. Because we unfortunately don't pay the higher taxes we used to pay. And it ends up where we would bear the full brunt of the cost of doing any of these things. And I'm just wondering if that could ever be taken into consideration and if there's some alternative to tax credits to help seniors be able to do these things. A lot of us are very motivated to do it. And my other point, just quickly,
go on. Yeah.
I talked to many millennials. My son and his wife are millennials. Their biggest interest in the last election was student debt relief, and it's very crippling for them economically to bear the brunt of it, and in such a, in an ongoing way. And they are hoping, I think that it would incentivize a lot more millennials. They're kind of disgusted that they haven't had the kind of result they had hoped for. And I think it would incentivize them to be more active and in terms of being voters.
Yep. Let me take both of those on. So on the tax credits, I got good news for you. These are refundable tax credits. So even if you owe zero taxes, let's say you go out and you purchase an electric vehicle that qualifies under the law, you would get $7,500 back, even if you owe no taxes. That would just be a refund, a rebate that you would get back. And the same goes for the home energy credits. So, you'd have to do the math and figure out what makes sense for you, what you would like to do. But it doesn't actually matter how much tax you may owe or pay in a particular year. You still get the credit. On the student loans, look, I think it's a problem. I think it's really ridiculous that you have student loan interest rates that are so much higher than what we pay for mortgages or what small businesses pay for loans. This is a good investment in the future, not just of these kids, but of the country. I don't believe in just forgiving student loan debt. Plenty of people take out loans and work hard and pay them back, and that's the deal that they signed up for. But the interest rate should not be that high, and that's what I support Congress doing something about. I also would support capping repayment of loans as a percentage of income. So, if you go and graduate from college and work for a Wall Street firm and you're making tons of money, then you pay the full amount. But if you're a teacher, if you're in public service, you're making less money, your repayment should be a manageable percentage of income. That's actually what we did with the health insurance coverage under the Affordable Care Act. We said nobody pays more than 8.5% of their income for their health insurance. I think that's the fair approach, and it's what I would support. Thanks so much.
Appreciate you, Cynthia. Thank you very much for that question. Our next one's coming to us from Alan in Hillsborough, who's asked me to read this one for him. He asks, 15% corporate tax. Is that a flat tax? Can you take that on from Alan in Hillsborough, please, Congressman?
Sure. It's a minimum tax, right? So the corporate tax rate is 21%. So some companies would pay more than 15. What we're basically saying is that if you're a huge corporation, you're profitable over $1 billion a year, you should pay a minimum of 15%. And then the rest is determined by, you might pay more than that based on other factors. Look, one of the most common dodges in recent years is that you have these multinational companies that they'll set up a subsidiary in another country that has low or no corporate taxes, and then they book all their profits to their subsidiary, and then they book all their losses to their headquarters in the United States. And so they pay no tax on their profits in Ireland or some island in the South Pacific. And then because they book their losses to their headquarters in the U.S., Uncle Sam gives them a refund. And it's totally legal. It's not their fault. It's our fault for designing a tax system that allows that. So the simple solution, rather than cleaning up all the complexities in the tax code, the simple solution is a minimum tax, and we are also the administration's working on negotiating a deal with our allies in Europe and around the world to try to make this international, so that we limit the number of places companies can go to evade taxes. Thanks so much.
Appreciate the question, Alan. Thank you. And we'll go to our next one from David in just a moment, but we have 15 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and make a last call here for email updates from the Congressman's office. We just finished clearing that queue, so thanks to those of you who already gave us your email address for updates. If anybody else would like to get email updates from Congressman Malinowski, press 7 now. Go to one of our operators, give them your email, and we'll add you to that update list. If you'd like to do that after the forum today, you can go to malinowski.house.gov and sign up there. Let's get to our next question from David in Somerville. Thank you for waiting, David. Go ahead.
Thank you. And Congressman, I first want to say thank you very much for all of the work that you did in getting the Inflation Reduction Act onto the President's desk. My question deals with cross-border adjustments. Can you share any insight into the thinking and feelings within the House of Representatives right now about moving forward with cross-border adjustments?
Thanks. And are you referring to like the carbon border adjustment idea? Is that?
It looks like he might have disconnected right as he finished his question there, Congressman.
Okay. But so I'm going to assume that. Hopefully I'm right. So as we discussed, one of the big things we're trying to do in the bill is take on climate change, right? So that we have a planet that our kids can live on, and cleaner air. The bill will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. That also means pollution by 40% by 2030. So cleaner air for all of us, and in a way that allows the United States, our companies, our workers, our scientists to lead this global transition, because the whole world wants to buy clean energy technology. I want America to make it and export it to the rest of the world. And we do it mostly through tax incentives, as I've explained. There's another idea out there which I think is a fantastic idea, because we can't do this alone, right? America alone cannot address the threat of global climate change. We need countries like China, which are generally not helpful, countries like India, to be doing the right thing as well. So the idea here is that if we're importing goods from another country that pollutes, that uses fossil fuels to manufacture those goods, that you could slap basically a carbon fee or carbon tax at the border on those goods that takes into account the carbon input, the fossil fuel input into manufacturing those goods, so that countries like China actually pay a price if they're manufacturing steel by burning coal. So I'm for it. There's some bipartisan support for it in the U.S. Senate. It's complicated, so we haven't done it yet. It was not part of this bill, but I think a major priority in the next Congress, as we try to take the next step in this direction, will be to look at those kinds of mechanisms. Thanks so much for raising it.
Much appreciated again. Thank you. We've got time for a few more questions here. Danielle in Union, you're live. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi. I have a question about the green energy. I've been doing a lot of studying on this, and a lot of the material needed to produce these are from China and all that, Russia, and it takes a lot of minerals and destroying the earth to make these products, and then when they're no good anymore, they're going to pollute the earth, which is even worse than gas and oil. What is the solution?
So another good part, and thanks for raising that, it's a totally legitimate question, because we have, for example, a lot of the batteries that are used in electric vehicles right now. They're mostly made of a mineral called cobalt, much of which is mined in African countries like the Congo, where working conditions are bad. There are key components of solar panels that minerals that are mined in China, including in the part of China where the genocide of the Uyghurs is taking place. So some of our solar panels inevitably have materials in them that were produced with slave labor. I want to change that. And one of the good things in this bill is that, for example, the electric vehicles, the tax credits only apply to vehicles that are mostly assembled in the United States, with components that mostly come from the United States or from countries that are allies of ours, that have good environmental practices, good labor practices. So not every EV is going to be covered right away, but it's going to be an incentive for the manufacturers to source those batteries in different places, to source more battery technology, in particular in the United States. That'll be good for jobs in our country, but also good for the environment, and it'll help address the concern that you just raised. So very much top of our minds, and we're trying to do something about it in this bill. Thank you.
Great question, Danielle. Thank you for bringing that into our forum. And we're going to go to Andrea in Union next, who's asked me to read her question. She asks, are you monitoring the income levels on this new bill? I'm concerned that people are just showing Medicare payments who may have money saved or invested in the bank. That one's from Andrea in Union. Congressman.
Medicare, of course, is something that we all pay for when we're working, right? It's like Social Security. It's not a program just for for low-income people, it's an insurance program that we pay into during our working years, and we earn those benefits in our retirement years. So, these the lower prescription drug benefits, the lower prescription drug prices, they're going to be for everybody. But I think that's right. I think that's fair because we did earn the benefits. We paid into the system, and I don't think there's any good reason why Americans should be paying 5, 6, 10 times as much, no matter what our income level is, for these drugs as people in Canada and Germany and England and France. So I think it's the right thing to do. Thanks so much.
Thank you again. Appreciate the question from Andrea. Let's go to another question from Yolanta, who's asking me to read this. Question is regarding your tax fairness comment. How are you keeping companies from leaving the U.S. or outsourcing if you raise their taxes? That one's from Yolanta.
Sure. Well, it does stop them from outsourcing because the minimum tax, if you're a corporation based in the United States, you pay taxes in the United States, you're going to owe this minimum tax even if you try the types of dodges that I just mentioned, like, creating a subsidiary in Ireland or the Seychelles or someplace where there's a very low corporate tax rate. And in the meantime, Treasury Secretary Yellen has actually already negotiated an agreement with many of our allies around the world through an organization called the OECD, which includes most of the wealthy countries in the world, where every one of those countries has committed to implement a 15% minimum tax as well. So in this bill, we're doing our part of the bargain. We're going to stay on top of all these other countries, some of which have good minimum corporate taxes, others don't. But we're going to stay on top of all of them to try to make sure that this is done internationally to minimize the small possibility that some companies might try to move elsewhere to avoid it. Look, most multinational corporations want to be in the United States, right? We are the center of the global economy. We've got the most wealthy consumers, so they want to be here. We just want to make sure that they can't do anything tricky to avoid taxes in the future, and a minimum tax on global earnings is a good way to start. Thanks.
Appreciate it. I believe we have time for one more here, Congressman, coming to us from Nancy, who asked me to read this question for her as well. She says, regarding state employees, healthcare costs are skyrocketing. Is there any legislation being put in place to mitigate that? And that's from Nancy.
You mean if you mean from New Jersey state employees, there are state level issues which I may not be qualified to directly address. But what we do ensure in this bill is that anybody who gets their health care coverage from the Affordable Care Act exchanges, right, and that's available for everybody. If you don't have coverage that you like from your employer, this is something that you can explore on our New Jersey Healthcare Exchange. What we're ensuring in this bill is that is affordable for not just the poorest Americans, who get Medicaid and have always gotten subsidies, but for middle-class Americans, people making $50,000, $75,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. We ensure that nobody in that category is going to pay more than 8.5% of their income for health insurance. So that's not, as with all the issues that we discussed this evening, we haven't settled everything, and we haven't solved everything, and that's why I'm going to keep at it in Congress on all of these issues and try to take more steps forward. But we have taken a gigantic step forward at a time when many people, I fear, were losing confidence in the ability of Congress and our institutions to deliver for them. These were the issues that voters talked to me about when I first ran in 2018 and again in 2020. And And I told them if we worked hard, if we tried, we elected the right people, we weren't going to solve everything, but we could make progress. And I think I can fairly reasonably say that that promise was kept. And hopefully you'll have confidence that if we went this far in a couple of years, that we can go further in the next couple of years. And that's my pledge to you tonight, that I will keep on working hard on these practical solutions that are responsive to the concerns that voters raise with me at forums like this every single day. So thank you so much for raising that and all of the other questions this evening.
Yeah, appreciate you, Nancy. Thank you so much. I know you submitted your question early, so thank you for hanging out until the end here to get that answered, and really appreciate all of these excellent questions submitted on this topic tonight. I'm going to go over just a couple of housekeeping points, and then I'll turn it back over to the Congressman to give us any closing thoughts. If you need more information on the Congressman's work, or if you need to sign up for email updates, you can go to malinowski.house.gov. You can follow him online on Facebook at Congressman Tom Malinowski. You can follow him on Twitter at Rep Malinowski, and on Instagram at Rep Tom Malinowski. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel, Rep Tom Malinowski. And with that, I will turn it back over to the Congressman to offer any closing thoughts before we wrap up.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for participating this evening. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. It's incredibly helpful to me to hear from you. I've done around 130 of these public meetings since I was sworn into office in January of 2019, telephone town halls, in-person town halls, virtual town halls, and your questions become my priorities in Washington, D.C. So thank you for doing your part to help me do a better job, and I look forward to doing this again with you many, many more times. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Congressman. And if anybody has any additional questions, concerns, anything you need the Congressman's office's help with, stay on the line, leave a voicemail message with your name, your phone number, and the nature of your question or concern. They'll follow up with you in the next few days. Thanks again. Be safe.